Hello, my degenerate YouTube friends. I am here to entertain you by playing video games and talking over them on the internet. But I'm not very good, just a heads up. Anyway, this is going to be my first Let's Play. Vampire, the Masquerade Bloodlines. Probably one of the best video game RPGs ever made. Incidentally, also based off of a tabletop RPG. But it's a fairly old game, and it's kind of unpolished, to be perfectly honest. It didn't get much support from Activision while it was being made, and it really shows. But 9 unofficial patches later, it is pretty damn playable. So I've decided that it is time to do a Let's Play of what is probably one of my favorite games ever. I've only beaten it all the way through once, but I've played it like a bajillion times. And we'll probably see the effects of that when we get into the earlier levels. I'm going to know where most of the things are, but once we move on a little bit, I'm going to start getting into the territory where I've forgotten. Now, just a heads up, I tend to play video games in a sort of role-play manner, meaning I do things as my character would rather than how I would, or at least I try to. That's just how I play games, so you're gonna have to bear with it. And if you can't, well then kindly fuck off. Anyway, let's get this started here. So, in case you hadn't realized, this is a game about vampires. In fact, you are a vampire. And there are a number of clans of which we can choose from. Bruja, which are basically a bunch of malcontents. Gangrel, which are kind of like animalistic loners who give in to the bestian side because they're a bunch of weirdos. The Malkavians, who are mentally ill. That's it. Nosferatu, who are gross. We'll see some of that later. Toreador, who are your kind of standard seductive, like manipulative vampires who are all pretty and stylish. And Tremere, who are basically vampire wizards. And the Ventru, who are a bunch of rich old douchebags who generally are not very nice and run everything. We're going to be playing as a Bruja, but our character here is not like this, really. He's kind of a pansy, if we're being honest. His name is Norman. And these are the histories. They don't really influence anything story-wise. They just change your starting stats, give you bonuses or negatives. And we're going to be picking Anti-Paladin, which, this is really not important. You can read it if you want to. It doesn't have any bearing on our characters' here actual background, which I will explain over the course of this Let's Play as I come with new things. It costs me fewer experience to raise potence, which makes our melee attacks stronger, essentially. And you start with a point in Brawl, which is really useful. I'll explain why when we get to the next stage here. And it costs you more to raise Celerity and Humanity, which I don't really mind, and I'll also explain here. Now let's go to the character sheet. Now, if you recall, I said that this was based off of a tabletop RPG. And yeah, this is our character sheet. Now, I'm going to be trying to put the stats in as to reflect my character's personality, but there are things where I'm going to just have to not put points into them because they're useless. Definitely put at least 1 point in Brawl, so we have 2 with the bonus, because Brawl is important for the unarmed combat feat, but more importantly, it also makes it easier to feed on the unwilling, meaning humans that you've alerted and are fighting you. It's really helpful because blood is kind of a precious commodity in this game, especially with the mod Camarilla edition that I am currently running, which adds a lot of stuff into the game, but doesn't, change the experience too much. I like it. Dodge is useful and increases your defense feat, which is fairly self-explanatory. It keeps you from being dead again. Intimidation, we're not going to be building any points into this as of yet, because our character, as I said, is kind of a pansy. He's not very intimidating, at least not yet. Subterfuge, he's pretty good with the ladies, so we're going to put one there. I kind of want to put a third one into Brawl, but I'm not going to because that's stupid. I'm going to put one into Dodge because we are kind of a glass cannon when it comes to supernatural opponents right now. We can do damage with our potence and our blood buff, but we can't really take so much damage. In physical, I'm going to put 2 into dexterity. You might be wondering why, and it's because of 2 little stats over here, lockpicking and sneaking. Lockpicking is goddamn essential. No, seriously, you will need it to complete the game, or at least to complete the game correctly, without doing a lot of bullshit. Sneaking, I just really like. We don't have obfuscate, which is the discipline that lets you go invisible, so it's going to be really useful. We don't get any social points, because apparently we're antisocial. Now, these are our mental stats. Perception, which increases ranged combat, and inspection. Inspection helps you find hidden items. Intelligence, which increases research, which you can go to the online college and raise your skills and such with money. We're not going to be using that, at least not off the bat. Wits is what we want. Increases our defense and also our hacking. Hacking is massively important. I'm going to tell you that right now. Not so much in the beginning, because I remember some of the passwords for certain computers, but I'm not going to be using those unless not using them would disrupt the flow of the game and make me have to backtrack and waste a lot of time. But we're not going to put a point into that just yet. We're going to put it into rhetoric, which increases our persuasion. Persuasion is useful in the same way that seduction is, and it gives you extra dialogue options. So you can work the situation to your advantage. It's good to have as many options as you can in this game, because there's a lot of times you can get through things without having to fight, and it's usually better to do so. Or at least to come back later and then fight when they're not expecting it, which is the case sometimes. Now, here are our skills. As a Bruja, we are kind of combat-oriented, even though our character Norman here isn't. And we're going to put 1 into stealth, definitely, because I'm kind of a bitch, and I like to sneak around, because I'm bad at video games. We may put 1 into security. No, that's kind of a waste. Put it in melee, because even though we're going to be using our bare hands a lot, having points in melee weapons is going to be essential once we get some of the better ones, because they will quickly outpace our fists in terms of damage. Especially with, since the things that enhance our strength when in hand-to-hand combat also help with melee weapons. But at the beginning here, we're not going to be able to wield most of the good melee weapons, or even the decent ones. And for our disciplines, we're going to put it into blood buff, because blood buff is probably the most useful discipline in the game. It raises your stats, these stats, by a certain number. With 2 points in it, it raises them by 2, which means it raises all of those yellow highlighted skills by a certain amount, which allow you to lockpick things better, all sorts of useful shit. Celerity, now here's where our history comes in, where it gave us less of this. Our celerity basically affects our speed. It makes everything slow down around us while we stay roughly at normal speed. And the reason I'm okay with it costing more to raise is that at this level it kind of breaks the game completely. Like, all the fights are a complete joke if you got celerity on and you got enough blood to maintain it. Because you can just literally run circles around all the enemies, because even though sometimes you're fighting vampires that should have it, they don't use it. I've only seen it used once by another character in the game. I don't know if that's intended or not, but whatever. Presence is, it's kind of like it manipulates other people's emotions, and it's basically you can project like the force of your personality to affect others. This also gives us some dialogue options where we can be more intimidating than our like actual physical intimidation score would allow usually, because we're just so our personality is just so powerful because of our vampire powers. And potence, which basically just makes you stronger. It lets you punch people and hack at people better, and also has a cool little lightning effect. So yeah, blood heal is fairly self-explanatory because, well, it heals you. And that's all the disciplines we're going to have. I'm not going to skip the intro because you guys might want to see it. Oh, and after the intro we're going to head into the tutorial level, and that's where I'm going to cut off this video and head into the next one. But don't be mean to me because my commentary is terrible. This is my first Let's Play after all, so it's bound to be kind of shitty in parts. As we get further on this Let's Play, I'm sure I'll get more comfortable with speaking to you guys. Or you guys that will probably never watch this. Anyway, let's move on. I'm gonna shut up during most of this, because story stuff, you know. Gotta get that exposition. That's a lot of condoms. Did she show us her penis? Something tells me the answer is no. How many dresses was she wearing?
Good evening. My fellow kindred, my apologies for disrupting any business or interfering with prior engagements you may have had this evening. It's unfortunate that the affair that gathers us together tonight is a troubling one. We are here because the laws that bind our society, the laws that are the fabric of our existence, have been broken. As Prince, I am within my rights to grant or deny the kindred of this city the privilege of siring. Many of you have come to me seeking permission, and I have endorsed some of these requests. However, the accused that sits before you tonight was not refused permission. Indeed, my permission was never sought at all. They were caught shortly after the embrace of this child. It pains me to announce the sentence, as up to tonight I considered the accused a loyal and upstanding member of our organization. But as some of you may know, the penalty for this transgression is death. Know that I am no more adjudicator than I am a servant to the law that governs us all. Let tonight's proceedings serve as a reminder to our community that we must adhere to the code that binds our society, lest we endanger all of our blood. Forgive me. Let the penalty commence.
Hello, Cloud. Put on some weight.
Which leads to the fate of the ill-begotten progeny. Without a sire, most children are doomed to walk the earth never knowing their place, their responsibility, and most importantly, the laws they must obey. Therefore, I have decided that this is bullshit!
What he said.
If Mr. Rodriguez would let me finish. I have decided to let this kindred...
Oh, thank God.
They shall be
Wait,
instructed
my hands weren't bound behind my back?
and be granted
Fuck?
the same rights. Let no one say I am unsympathetic to the plights and causes of this community. I thank you all for attending these proceedings, and I hope their significance is not lost. Good evening.
When I said I was going to shut up during this, I was lying.